all the trees regarding our gender identity and sexuality. When there's no place like home, empty air, an empty establishment. Friends with Dorothy, fighting for your civil rights. Out on the cruel streets tonight.
Good afternoon and welcome to 103.2 Dublin City FM. You're listening to LGBTQ+life and I'm Mick Fitzgerald. Now, people are always asking me, what's the theme song that you do? And it's by some good friends of mine. They are based in Dublin. They are a couple of fabulous LGBTQ+ musicians, Deanna and Erin. And it is, they go under the name of Dear Bertrand. So look them up on YouTube. They have more than that, but they are really good. And I still like that song a hell of a lot, even though it's a couple of years old. What about yourself, Jenny?
I can't help but just have a wiggle every time it comes on.
Jenny, now, sorry, my guest today, we are welcoming back the fabulous Jenny Maguire, who is soon to be off, putting her nose down in the books to study for exams. So, welcome back again, Jenny.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy to be here.
We'd have you every week, but that might be that might start to raise a few eyebrows. Jenny, you last time you were here, you told us about you have a love of literature. Do you also go for the stage? Do you like plays?
Absolutely, I do love plays and I do love theatre. I've been involved a lot with different student theatre, mainly. I acted in some. I've done a lot more management recently. But yeah, I love all sort of theatre, specifically ones that don't take itself too seriously.
Well, they're still talking about your Hedwig in these parts of the world, particularly his angry inch.
But you know what? It's in the title, so I'd hope it's important.
It's an interesting play, that one, because it's like Rocky Horror. Everybody would think, oh yeah, that's just for the time, but it has got legs, hasn't it? And it has certainly got across generations.
Absolutely. I mean, Hedwig in recent years has become a little bit controversial in that with its depictions of what some people view as a trans person, which as a trans person who's played the role, like I love it so much. I think it deserves to be showcased, and it's such a fantastic story, and I think people are afraid to look deeper into it, and I just love Hedwig. I would love to play Frankenfurter. I'd only be afraid that I'd upstage everyone so much that everyone couldn't go on.
Have you ever seen a live performance?
I have.
Where did you see that?
I only saw the recent one in the Board Gosh recently.
Okay.
But yeah, that's it. And then numerous recordings online by illegal means.
Somebody who you may or may not know, but my good friend Max Krasinowski, who's another great Northsider like ourselves. I only found out a couple of years ago that Max, before he became Mr. Gay World, was in the Rocky Horror Show in Dublin sometime in the 80s.
Fabulous.
I saw when Tim Curry did the original in Chelsea. Now that shows you my age, but
listen, time is an illusion.
it is exactly. Yeah. So and then when you get much older, you can always go for La Cage aux Folles.
Absolutely. Listen, that's the stepping stone I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. As I say, I mean, somebody was saying to me the other day about they hadn't seen Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. What a sensational piece of work, isn't it?
Absolutely, I love Priscilla. It's so fabulous.
Did you like it?
I do.
Yeah.
I really enjoy Priscilla. I love its campiness, but then I also love the amount of heart it has, and I just think, I love Priscilla.
Well, here's one for you again, just to make you jealous. If you notice, they filmed quite a bit of it in a gay bar in Sydney, and that used to be called the Flinders, and that was pretty much my Saturday night hangout, and it was a great, it just brings all those good memories back when you see something like that. And the music in it is just fabulous.
Second, like, it's just so good and just so universally adored. I just love it so much.
Yeah. Australia has this really camp strain that goes through its culture. And ABBA and Dire Straits were both huge there before they were made it anywhere else. So who knows?
Who knows? I know there's so much Australians. My biggest quality that I love about them is not taking themselves too seriously, and I just think that provides such wonderful entertainment.
Well, you'd probably never come back if you ever went there, because they would love you to bits, and you would get so used to what I would call a good weather culture. Yeah, but that's for another day.
That's another day.
Yeah. Anyway, tell me, Jenny Maguire, I saw this photograph a few weeks ago, and there was Jenny Maguire sitting in the buttery, surrounded by, all I can say is, agitators.
That's me.
So what was all that about?
Yeah,
Tell
so
me.
that was a protest organised by a student group called Student for Change. They were protesting the lack of student spaces within Trinity, and the buttery charged you have to buy stuff from the buttery in order to sit in it, and so they thought that was completely absurd. They had students turned away just for bringing their own lunch in and sitting in the cafeteria, and there's really no other space like it on the campus, and so it was just a little peaceful sit-in protest. I had a lovely roll. It was delicious. It was really fabulous.
Well, when I saw that, and I'll tell you this story, which is again a true story. Long time ago, when I used to hang out in Trinity, even though I went to UCD, we used to hang around the buttery because we were hippie aristocracy, and doing what hippie aristocracy does. And there were about 6 or 7 of us, looking like an album cover from the Grateful Dead, beards and hair down to our tits and stuff like that. And there was a woman who managed the buttery in those days called Betty Pickering. And we used to, in the best of traditions, we used to call her Petty Bickering. And she'd come up and say, "You're not allowed to sit there, you have to buy something." And we'd say, "Oh, sure, Betty, cool, chill." And it was the same thing then.
The same thing. Yeah. And listen, never changes.
Nothing ever changes.
Nothing ever changes.
Now, the last time you were here, we never got round to talking about your work as the gender gender equality officer in TCZ. So you've given it up now, so I believe. So tell us, what did it entail being a gender equality officer?
Yeah, well, I very much went for it in a very unapologetically trans-inclusive way. I was very much going into it to support trans people and focus on trans people within the college. I did a lot of work regarding the state of trans healthcare in Ireland. We did protests, we did information campaigns. At the moment, this week, I've been working with Trans Pride Dublin and Trans Harm Reduction in a campaign to organise a picket of the National Gender Service, an online one, and I've just been mainly focusing. I've been tearing off bathroom signs off walls. I've been making policy changes within the college. Yeah.
Now, we never know how many trans people there are in an area, because some, like yourself, are out and proud, and others are still, shall we say, processing.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on Trinity? Are there many trans people there? Are there many out trans people there who you would possibly know quite a number of them?
Yeah, I like every space. Trans people exist and they're in every space and every walk of life. And Trinity, in fairness to them, they've been very receptive to support trans students, but it's more about just actually pushing them to do it. Like the pushback really isn't there, but it's actually having the conversations to make sure stuff happens to actually support the students, like any other student. And there definitely is a cohort of people I see walking around.
Sure. So who would you have to go to there? I mean, I know in certain instances that Trinity are okay. I won't go any further than that at supporting healthcare. Who would you have to go to in Trinity if you wanted to talk about trans rights and trans equality?
Well, first you probably go to your student union, and then you get a beautiful girl at the end of an email, me, and then I would work with the students to devise a plan with them for where we want to go forward. It kind of depends on, like, I've had students come to me about individual issues with individual lecturers to broader issues, just trying to go to college under your right name. And so, and that involves going to those lecturers or going to the vice provost for equality, or the kind of everywhere within college I've annoyed once or twice.
Sure. I know from personal experience that there was a case of a person who was studying in Trinity. I'm not going to give away their subject otherwise. And they wanted to enrol under their, if you like, accept their adopted name or their changed name. And one of the people there who was a bit conservative and didn't, we're talking 4 or 5 years ago now, and they were very reluctant about this. And fortunately, one of the senior academics, who I know personally, and who has listened to a lot of what I've had to say about trans, insisted that they treat this person the way they wanted to identify and the way they wanted to be treated. And eventually that was accepted. And I believe now Trinity actually have a very good policy on that. I don't know if you've seen, some of the faculties have.
Absolutely, yeah. There is a college-wide policy for changing your name and gender. I only, over the last, probably about a year ago now, when I went into the role, I had a change that there was a strange, like, bureaucratic issue that even though you changed your name, all assessments would go through as your old name, your dead name, and so that's been changed, thankfully. But the system is quite good, but I'm, you know, a stickler for making it as easy as possible, and so I think it can go further, but I do think it's quite good.
So what's the story about, say, that old chestnut of changing rooms and bathrooms and all of that? Or Trinity, where do Trinity come down on all that?
Well, a few years ago, Trinity brought in its first gender-neutral bathrooms. Since then, the gender-neutral bathrooms have they're not very well signposted, and I remember before I was out in my first year being in the library, and I just felt comfortable using a gender-neutral bathroom at the time, and so I tried to just Google where are the gender-neutral bathrooms, and there's an issue with accessible toilets being used as gender-neutral bathrooms, which obviously is not ideal, and so it's quite stagnant at the moment, and the bureaucracy within Trinity, but also most third-level institutions, puts the burden on the student just trying to use the toilet, and so the college needs to take more responsibility on that part.
Yeah, I mean, what I call the curmudgeons, we hear a great deal about trans women hanging around changing rooms and bathrooms and all of that, but something we don't hear much about at all, and I would have said it was something where we should be much more aware and be much more wary, and that is that gender neutral bathrooms, you know, double Y chromosome men hanging around to sexually harass and abuse trans women. Does that even come up for discussion?
I don't think so, because I think, you know, this whole issue with safety in bathrooms is, with all due respects, made up in a way. It's not it's not made, like, the safety concerns are never for the trans person. They're never for the trans man having to go into the women's restroom and being harassed out. It's never for the trans woman who obviously would be under immense danger for having to go into any men's bathroom. Incredibly vulnerable. And so it's just because the people raising these discussions don't really have the interests of the trans person at heart, and it's just the hatred that's in their heart.
My experience has always been that the most, you know, so-called butch presenting homophobic male is usually the most in the closet and in denial, and they're the ones that I would be most wary of, rather. So somehow or other, this is why I raised this issue, that it needs to be addressed to protect trans women. That's
treating people with the respect and dignity that they deserve.
And the safety.
And
absolutely. The safety. So we'll come to the wider issue of trans healthcare in Ireland, because I know this is another subject that is near and dear to your heart. What's it like in Trinity? Could you go to some medical officer and say, hello, I would like to have hormones, or I'm on hormones, can you help me out in that regard? What's the story there?
Yeah.
Is it, I'm going to use a really bad joke here. There used to be this joke about, we were talking 20 years ago, did you hear about the Irish the Irish abortion clinic 10-month waiting list? Is it the same?
That's right. It's
a 5-year waiting list for the trans healthcare. So you just come in and finish your degree and then, sorry.
Oh, so sorry. So sorry about that.
Something again, and I don't expect you to necessarily know this, but again, it's fundamental for the future, and that is, what did they teach about trans in the medical courses and the some of the, if you like, social science courses?
Yeah, so I spoke to a few people that do medicine and a few people that have graduated, and it's mainly how inclusion works within most higher level institutions and in most of broader society is a tick the box exercise. Yeah. They'll bring in one person from town you belong to, but sometimes they bring in a person from the National Gender Service, which a lot of trans activist groups, including people like me, would be strongly against. And just for one lecture, and that would be your training to deal with trans people, not just to access trans healthcare, but to access all kinds of healthcare, something that if we can't even focus and tackle the issue of specific healthcare that's just for trans people, we can't have broader conversations about a trans person that's just broken their arm and they don't deserve to be discriminated against.
And again, something you had a campaign about saying Ireland has the worst trans healthcare in Europe. Is that true? And how bad is it here, if that's the case? So
Ireland has the worst trans healthcare in the EU.
Even worse than places like Romania and...
So how it works, well, the system by Transgender EU, they released a study that found Ireland was the worst based on a multiple point system. We have a 10-year long waiting list. We have no surgical options in this country.
At all?
No, we have a top surgery place in Galway that you can go privately, but outside of that there is nothing for that specifically for trans men, but there's nothing for trans women there. Even if you get through on the waiting list, the psychiatric model that's used is not recommended by the World Health Organization.
Is that in Loughlinstown?
That's in Loughlinstown, but there are other facilities across Ireland, but they still use that system because that's the one that the National Gender Service recommends.
Okay, and now it's interesting because almost all the trans men that I know, and I know over half a dozen, for top surgery, they've all gone to Poland. Now, Poland is not recommended for its human rights record, or particularly its LGBT rights record, yet they can do something that we can't.
But they have fabulous... Exactly, they have... that's what I have a few friends from Poland, and when I say to them, where's trans healthcare in the EU, they're like, I'm from Poland and it's terrible. I'm like, it absolutely is. However, there's still structures in place that, Poland is often the only place that a lot of trans... I know so many other trans men that have gone to Poland.
Well, gone to Poland, haven't they? A couple went to the US.
There's just no structures in place in Ireland to properly support trans people.
Okay, now it's interesting because almost all the trans men that I know, and I know over half a dozen, for top surgery, they've all gone to Poland. Now, Poland is not recommended for its human rights record, or particularly its LGBT rights record.
Exactly, they have. That's what I have a few friends from Poland, and when I say to them, "Where's trans healthcare in the EU?" they're like, I'm from Poland and it's terrible. I'm like, it absolutely is. However, there's still structures in place that, Poland is often the only place that a lot of trans... I know so many other trans men that have gone to Poland.
Well, gone to Poland, haven't they? A couple went to the US.
There's just no structures in place in Ireland to properly support trans people.
I don't know if this came up in your remit when you were the gender equality officer. Trinity, we know they have a women's rugby team, and I won't go into the details about what one of the coaches did there, but just accept my word that it was disgraceful. How do they support trans women in sport? Do they have the same bigoted attitude, particularly, say, women's rugby, that, shall we say, other sporting bodies do?
Yeah, well, the Irish rugby association. I'm not sure.
Rugby union.
Rugby union.
Yeah.
Yeah, sport is not my forte, but they, of course,
They
banned trans women from competing in rugby. But I have found that it hasn't been a lot of issue. Trinity hasn't had much that of an issue. It has a very strong equality statement. Of course, there is a broader issue with just LGBT people in sports because of the culture that's created, both in men and women's sport. But so far, there hasn't been too much issues. This year I worked a lot with there's a sports union within Trinity, and they're very firm in their stance that for all students should be able to play sports.
Sure. Yeah. I'll be honest, Johnny, I took great delight when I saw the international tournament that finished for, the home nations, and Ireland played 5, lost 5, won none. I think they got about 25 points, and they conceded about 250 points. So that's what you get. I have a thing that I like to call the curse of Rubenstein. When you upset me, bad things happen. I don't do anything, but bad things happen to people or organisations. And I think Irish Rugby Football Union, you invoked the wrath of Rubenstein. So there you go. Yeah. So but no, something else that came up during the year, and I again thought of you because of this, and that was the Brianna case. That must have just been devastating when you heard of it. We're talking about a 14-year-old woman who was, she was a 14-year-old girl who was murdered by a 15 and a 16-year-old, I believe. How did that hit you? It must have been like a dagger.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such a horrifically terrible place to be in. The state of transphobia in the UK is so much worse than it is here. It is growing here, of course, but just to see a child being attacked just because they're trans, just because they're going about their day, they had their whole life ahead of them. And, I often keep her in mind, Brianna, and all that. It's just so solemn. I went to the...
Did you go to the one at the Spire?
Yeah, I went to the one at the Spire at the Vigil, and I had to leave after a few minutes because it was just so heavy. Just the idea that this is the world we live in, and we like to, in Ireland, we like to pat ourselves on the shoulders for being great, LGBT advocates, but I think it's staring us back in the face that for our next door neighbours that's happening,
Excuse me, the only reassurance that came to me over that was about 3 or 4 days after that vigil, which I was at as well. I went there and there was still flowers and photographs, and I thought, this is the new Ireland that we respect. So, Jenny, we're unfortunately going to have to run out of time now, but that means we'll probably have to have you back again after you've finished your exams. Are you doing anything for the summer?
Anything for the summer? I'm a part of an improv comedy group.
Where? Tell us.
It's called Improv She Wrote, and we'll be performing in Edinburgh Fringe.
Okay.
You
will love it.
Oh, I was there last year. It was such a good experience. I recommend it so much. I can't wait to go back.
See if you can come back for Galway Pride, and
Absolutely.
I will bring you over to my friends at the Jezebel Jocks, the Drag King Show, which is
Can't wait.
fabulous. So, Jenny Maguire, always a delight to have you in. Stay safe, stay fabulous.
Couldn't see the haunted forest for the trees regarding our gender identity and sexuality. When there's no place like home, empty air, an empty establishment. Friends with Dorothy, fighting for your civil rights. Out on the crew,